Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us at this webinar on working smarter, not harder. We're going to give it another minute or so because we know we have lots of people joining in this virtual auditorium. So just hang in there another 30 or 60 seconds and we'll get started. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's just afternoon, and my name is Pamela James. I am the Executive Director for Campus Human Resources, and I'm absolutely delighted that you've chosen to join us today for this Working Well Remotely webinar series. Hopefully some of you joined us last year, September, October, we had our first series, 7 different webinars on topics about helping everybody work more effectively remotely. In fact, it was so popular that we brought back new topics, and now we have 8 weeks of topics for you. So you'll see in the chat box the website where you can find last year's recorded webinars. So in case you missed them or you want a refresher, we still have those available. Plus, we'll be recording this session and all the future sessions for the website as well. So really, really glad that you chose to join us. So a bit of housekeeping before I introduce our co-hosts and the speaker. First, this is a webinar format, so unlike a typical Zoom meeting, you don't have a chat box option, but we do encourage questions through the Q&A box that you see down in the middle. So feel free, as our speaker and our co-hosts are on, to submit your questions, and we're trying to reserve 15 or 20 minutes at the end of our session for your questions. So with that, let's get to the main event. First, I'm delighted to introduce 2 of our senior cabinet members who are going to be our co-hosts. First, Dr. Wilson, who is the Chief Medical Officer for UCI Health. Dr. Wilson, would you mind telling us a little bit about your role at UCI?
Yes, thank you, Pamela. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be a co-host on this topic. I mean, who is not interested in working smarter rather than harder? A little bit about my background. I'm an adult and a pediatric cardiac anesthesiologist, and also have spent a lot of time developing intensive care units. I spent the first 20 years of my career down at UC San Diego. Was recruited up here a little bit more than 7 years ago now to run all the intensive care units. And after improving the patient safety and quality there, the leadership asked me to step in to be the chief medical officer for the hospital. And I have really enjoyed that work. And one of my main roles as being the chief medical officer is to ensure that the overall patient safety and quality improves. There's many different ways to measure that. And one is what's called the Vizient system. It used to be called UHC, University Hospital Consortium. UCI was rated 61 3 years ago, and then 43 2 years ago. Last year, we were rated number 8 in the nation, and we just saw some recent data for the last quarter. We are still right in that area. So everybody should be very proud, and I am very proud. But when I moved over from the clinical care, taking care of patients, to all of the administrative work, I realized that I needed to learn how to work smarter. And so I'm really looking forward to what we're going to hear from Marilouise Carlisle today for her insights. So happy to hear that.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. We're thrilled to have you. Now, Ramona Agrela, who is our Associate Chancellor and Chief Human Resources Executive, would you please introduce yourself to us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Pamela, and thank you, Dr. Wilson. I am very excited to be co-hosting this webinar series for you. I participated in the last year's session, and they were extremely informative and helpful. So I'm glad to see that you're all joining. My name is Ramona Agrela, and I'm the Chief Human Resource Executive here at UCI. I've been with UCI for over 20 years in different roles across the university. And this is my most recent. I've been in this position since 2015. I have a very unique position in that I get to work across the enterprise, not only on the main campus, but also in health sciences and at UCI Health. So it's my pleasure to be able to bring all those constituent groups together under the UCI HR umbrella. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to learn how. I'm always looking for ways to work more productively and smarter. So I'm really looking forward to this presentation. So I have the honor of introducing our speaker, Marilouise Carlisle. Marilouise is the lead instructor at UCI's Division of Continuing Education. Marilouise is an expert in the field of organizational communication and specializes in workplace training and development. She holds a master's degree in communication studies from Cal State Long Beach, where she was recognized for outstanding research in organizational communication. And in 2014, the Division of Continuing Ed awarded Marilouise the Distinguished Instructor Award. With that, Marilouise, I turn it over to you.
Marilouise, could you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you very much, Ramona, for the nice introduction. Everything is going just smoothly. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the kickoff of the webinars for UCI. I'm excited to be invited and to share some hopefully helpful tools to help you navigate this new kind of landscape that you see for your work. So a little bit about what I would want to accomplish in our brief time today, because we don't have that much time, but I want to make it as chock full with some ideas for you and some tools as possible. So I have three primary ideas of what I'd like to talk about with you today. The first one is that I would really encourage you to see the connection between your self-awareness and how your day plans out from a productivity perspective. So that's the first thing I really want to make sure that we hit, how important self-awareness is as a foundation for anything that happens in your world of work. So what I mean by that is I want to help you identify to get a really good habit of matching what is your best activity to be accomplished at the best time. And that's a tool that we'll share in just a minute. The other thing I want to share with you today is I want to talk about some productivity goals and to connect those to having a sense of accomplishment, which is directly related to your potential higher level of job satisfaction. And the last thing I want to talk about is I want to provide a couple of opportunities for you to see this time right now in your career, in your work, in your progress as a way to really maximize some career management tools that you can use. And that's, I think, where the working smarter really does begin to play in. Okay, so you talked a little bit about my background. I wanted to just add that I've always been so proud to be connected with UCI, and I might have come into some of your divisions to help departments use effective communication to solve problems. That's really what my area of expertise is how can we keep solving problems? Because when everybody's job is kind of is broken down and it's defined, we're all hired, every one of us, in every spot, we're hired to solve problems. Because if there weren't problems to be solved, there wouldn't be a place for you to step in and provide solutions. So I'm keeping that in mind. It's been my experience that as I've taught through the years, and I've been with UCI also 20 years doing this kind of work, I've noticed that there's three kinds of communicators. There's three different levels that I've kind of defined that I have observed. The first kind of communicator I call level 3. And the level 3 communicator is the person who has to repeat a request because they struggle to get the response the first time. They're not really getting an email back when they send one. There's a meeting and they don't get heard maybe as much as somebody else does. And so the outcome of that kind of level of communication is a kind of frustration. The second level of communicator that I have seen and I've observed is someone who sometimes they get a response, sometimes they're heard at meetings, and then this hit or miss is directly related to their level of frustration. So sometimes people pay attention to their writing or their messages or their requests, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes in a meeting, they're acknowledged and sometimes they aren't. And the level 1 communicator is what I always encourage my students to strive for. And the level 1 communicator is someone who is at their core, they are self-aware. And they're aware of how the room is getting read, and they're aware of how other people are communicating. And these are the ones, the self-aware ones, are the ones that are listened to. They get responses to email. They have the ability to persuade other people, which is a key skill in the world of communication. And they have a strong ability to problem solve. And at the other end of this, it just so happens that their level of frustration and anxiety turns out it's lower. So that's a great motivator right there. And these 3 levels of communication that I kind of created in my head, they're related to career management, and I'll revisit this before we close. So kind of divided this up into 3 different areas. I'm going to talk a little bit about you. As you can see on the screen, there should be our handout coming up. It's coming up right now. And then I'm going to give you a tool, a productivity tool, before we finish. And then as mentioned before, I'm going to have questions. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer those as we go through. So the first thing I want to share with you is this great quote, because I love quotes that are motivating. And this great quote talks about, if you don't have a strategy to manage your day, and you could replace that with not having a strategy to manage your career or manage your productivity. It's a little bit like expecting that the bull's not going to come at you because you decided that you were a vegetarian. I think that's such a great quote, because having a strategy is what makes the difference. And having a strategy based on self-awareness is really how you move into the working smarter category. So the first thing I want you just to think about as we walk through this, I want you to think about what do you use to manage your day? Do you put everything in your phone? Do you have a kind of written planner system? Is there another system that you use? How do you organize your day and your time? Because everybody makes a decision about that, about what works the best. And the second one is, when are you the sharpest? So are you most aware or keenly aware of typos or things maybe when you're looking at numbers? Do you notice them more in the morning? Do you notice them more in the afternoon? When are you the most awake? And everybody has a certain clock of when they can be aware of when they're the most awake. And what you want to do is, build that into your self-awareness tool so that you can make sure that when you're doing fine work and you're doing work that takes a lot of focus, whenever you can, you're maximizing it by using it during your best hours. And so I want you to think about how there's not one system that works best for all. And if there was one system that worked best for all, we'd all be using the system that was invented maybe 20 years ago in a Franklin planner, where we made a list and then we itemized the list and then we prioritized the list. And not everybody thinks like that. And not everybody likes a phone. So once you figure out what's the best way for you to manage your day and your ideas and your tasks, that's really a key component of being a smart productive worker, because then you can use what works best for you to your advantage. So just from a personal perspective, I don't use a phone. A phone isn't adequate for me to lay out my day and write down the details of what I want to accomplish. And so some of you might see, if you go to Target, you see there's a whole industry now of people that use planners and stickers and all kinds of different ways to manage their day. So the key here is take the thing that works the best for you, and then use it as a strength, as a tool. What works best for you to stay organized? The other thing I want to talk about is, as you take possession of your day in the best way, I want you to think about setting some goals as a key component of time management. And I think right now it's really important for me to acknowledge that, working at home for everyone, has probably been for you good in some ways, maybe not so great in others. And I don't think that it's all or nothing. I think the plus should be, obviously we're going to put casual clothing on the top of that list. We're going to put, 24/7 access to food. You don't have any traffic. And then maybe for some of you, not having access to your coworkers is a minus or a plus, depending upon your temperament. But in any event, there's been some pluses and some minuses. And so what I want you to do as you go forward and think about, moving forward in this year, I want you to put some closure on the shock of all of a sudden we were, in a different landscape of work. I want you to put some closure on that and maybe hit a reset button on, okay, now what kinds of opportunities can I take as I manage my day and I manage my work and the work that I do? So one of the things I want to share with you is this idea of setting goals. And I think setting goals is something that's overlooked. And a lot of people think it's too complicated. And I don't want to make it complicated. I want to make it real simple and tell you a couple of ideas about setting goals, where you maybe take a look at monthly goals or maybe every 3-month goals, and you consider what your values are, and then you put those into categories of goals. So this is a great way to kind of benchmark the year for yourself so that you can kind of break down, what do I want to take care of in my professional life, in my financial life, in my household, in my education life. One of the things that I do as a tool for planning is I make a 3-month goal, and I just have about 4 categories of things that I want to accomplish. And I have just 4 categories of goals. And I carry those over month to month, but it gives me a place to put what I want to accomplish so that 3 months doesn't go by and I feel as if I accomplished nothing, because you are accomplishing things. What's maybe missing, perhaps for you to consider, is maybe what's missing is a place to put your idea, or a place to put your goal, or a place to put something that you'd like to accomplish. So that's just a little work about a little bit about goal setting, and that, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to goals, and that your future really is determined by whatever habits you incorporate daily in your routine, in your habit, and in your planning. And so related to that, I would like to give you a tool that I want to break down for you, and it's called the Eisenhower Matrix. It's a fantastic productivity tool, has to do with time management. And I think that it really describes in a great way how you can compartmentalize your time and how you can customize it based on your kind of work. So this actually was designed by Eisenhower. He came up with this idea, and maybe you've seen this quadrant before. It's used a lot. It's just a really important, I think, tool where you can match what's the best use of my time right now based on today, or my week, or the structure that I'm in right now, and how does that match up with the actual task? So let me walk you through some of the ideas of this matrix. And as I said before, what we'll do is, have questions if you want to get a little bit more in detail. But let me walk you through what a great little quadrant this is. And by the way, whenever you have tools, the best kinds of tools, for some random reason, always spec out into a grid of 4. If you can create a tool that specs out into something that is a grid of 4, it's likely to become a usable tool for you. If it had more boxes or less, if for some reason it doesn't stay with people, but it has longevity, something about the magic of 4. And that's a whole nother webinar, the magic of 4. Okay, so let me walk you through how great this is. So the first quadrant is going to be urgent and important. And these are the things that you must do. And these are the things that you want to make sure that they need your immediate attention, and that you're in some kind of a conversation with your supervisor or your direct reports or your team or whoever you're working with, that you're all on the same page, that this is important and it's urgent. That's where you're going to solve the problems that are critical. It's an emergency, it's a crisis, it needs your immediate attention. So these are the ones that you're going to do first. All right, so that's where you want to line up. The second one is not urgent and it should get done. And these are the tasks where you want to do some scheduling and some planning. This is a lovely quadrant. A lot of people get bored here because they don't want to spend time planning or developing a new process or recognizing new opportunities. This might be, marketing a program or maintaining a standard. You can customize it. It's not urgent, but it is still essential. It's still important. And I think what happens is we get very busy. I know that for a lot of people, this is the case. They get very busy and they get kind of this, acceleration rush of everything is urgent and everything is important, but we can't sustain that pace. It's impossible to sustain working in that first quadrant all the time. That's where we get burnout. So the advantage is you give your nervous system an opportunity to rest and to develop and to plan and to prepare, and it's essential, and it's the things that should get done. They might not be as exciting as the first quadrant, but they are still important nonetheless. Okay, the third quadrant down is the one that is called not important, and it's urgent. And this is a quadrant that is an illusion. So this is where you can lose time because it's interruptions from other people that are that are not important. And I actually do a day of training on this, little promotion. I do a training on this, and I talk about how, all interruptions aren't bad. There's a whole art and science to the whole idea of interruptions. In fact, I'm really proud to say that there's an expert at UCI who did some groundbreaking work on interruptions. It's kind of fantastic, but that's another webinar. But interruptions come from maybe coworkers that are unimportant, or they're not productive interruptions, any kind of a distraction, other people's priorities that aren't in line with yours. So what you want to do is think about what else comes in here. You all know the person who, when you were working in your office, they would walk by and you'd think, oh, here I go, I'm going to lose a half hour. Here comes Jim, I'm losing a half hour. So this is the trivial kind of quadrant where it's easy to lose time, and it usually comes from other people wanting to come into your quadrant of your day and your priorities. So this is where your ability to be an effective communicator is absolutely essential, because if you cannot push back on other people's interruptions, then you're at the mercy of them taking over your day. And that is where this kind of level 1 communicator can keep a boundary and stay into their important tasks. The last quadrant is kind of fun. And that's the quadrant is it's not urgent and it's not important, but it's the things you want to do. It's what you want to do. So I just would put in that quadrant, I would just put the box of the zeitgeist of Netflix, because Netflix lives in that box. It's not important and it's not urgent, but I've got to binge watch The Queen's Gambit because that's what I have to do. I have to do it. And it's so hypnotic, I've noticed on Netflix, who are very clever, that what they do is they're already loading the next episode before the other one is over. So I was watching, as an example, I was watching something on Netflix and it had 7 episodes. And because I really want to savor it, and I'm really conscious of this grid, I'm only going to reward myself and watch one at a time, because I don't have 3 hours to sit and watch all of them. And they're so brilliant at a hypnotic cue that before the show has even ended, they're already loading the next one, and they drop you in and you don't even know you're in it. So that's what Netflix did to us. I know that at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all, I wasn't watching Tiger King, but I know a lot of people were, and it was just, it was on a constant loop. So this is the quadrant where Netflix lives. This is the quadrant where gossip lives. So it's not important, it's not urgent. And this is where you really want to make sure that you are very aware of what you put in this quadrant. Another thing that kind of creeps into this quadrant is when you have an unrealistic expectation of perfectionism across the board, because perfectionism is not a realistic goal. Now, if I'm a surgeon, it absolutely is. But everyday tasks, I really try to refer people to take a look at excellence instead of perfectionism, because it will eat up your time and it'll keep you from the essential tasks. Okay, so a couple of ideas about this great grid that I want to share with you is that sometimes people like to live in the important and urgent box, and they have this addiction kind of to everything has to be urgent, and it's actually called a syndrome, the acceleration syndrome. And I want you to just be very aware of that some people wait to the last minute and they like to have that rush of adrenaline, and if it's not there, they create and push everything into that quadrant. So you want to be very aware of making sure that doesn't kind of rub off on you, because that's how you'll burn out. And I had a coworker many years ago. We'll call her Gloria. And Gloria was only able to function at work and create and complete her tasks if she was in some kind of a crisis. So she actually stomped around. She stomped around the office and would stomp up to my desk. And I had to create this like hedge around myself, because I didn't want to get folded in to her drama, because her drama was the only way that she could get motivated. And I know that it's kind of a hypnotic thing that people do. So you have to be very aware of that. One of the things I would really encourage people to do is make sure that your team is very aligned around what's urgent and what's important. That's critical. And it's your team going up, going down, going across. All of the people that are working on your projects need to understand what is in the first quadrant and what is in the second quadrant, because that's going to maximize your productivity in your time. And that's part of working smarter. So you want to keep and use the words. I mean, use the same vocabulary, discuss. Is this urgent? Is it important? Is it not urgent? Use this as a vocabulary. Okay, a couple of last ideas I want to share with you so that we can get to some questions. I want to suggest to you that during this time of, we're still working from home, and you have a different a different work day. It looks different, maybe it feels different. I really would like you to think about and to consider this idea of using it as an opportunity for driving your career path and driving your career management. And I have a couple of ideas I would like to share with you around that. One of the things I always encourage people to do always is to keep an inventory of your work week and what you've accomplished, especially around what problems that you've solved. What problems did you solve? Because when you are looking to move in your position or in any way to validate what you're doing, you are evaluated not on just coming to work. That just means that you showed up. That means that you did the duties, you met your responsibilities. In order to really have the career that you think about and to match your dream, you want to make sure that you can articulate, what problems did I solve? What are the results that I had? And whenever you can quantitate those results, that's effective. That's huge. So think about, and if you pull back to a job interview, and not that you want to leave, but just consider, imagine a year from now and you're in a job interview and somebody asks you the question, well, okay, so when you were in this position, what were some of the problems that you solved? And can you walk us through some of the steps, or what did you initiate to solve these problems? And this is where your weekly inventory comes into play, because you took the time during this time when you stopped to really think about it, you took the time to think about the problems that you've solved. You've kept a running record of what you've accomplished, and start with verbs like you were arranged, you created, you designed, you developed, and what was the output, what was the outcome. That's what your future is going to look like. And that's how you're going to always, forever sell yourself. I mean, that's where we're moving. So make sure that you inventory your skills. And even if you can, think about putting under professional goals. Think about that there's something that you want to learn during this time. Something in a professional skill. Maybe there's something new technical that you didn't have an opportunity to learn when you were in the office, but now that you're in this new work structure, maybe you can learn a new technical skill and add that to your inventory. So you working backwards from the rubric of how you're evaluated also. So if you're going to have an evaluation and for your performance, what are some of the things that you could tighten up on during this time as you're going through your day, so that you can look back and say, wow, I did do this work. Work was different during these years, this year and a half, this year, these months, whatever. But I took the opportunity to really do a step back of how I wanted to customize some of the things that I'm responsible for, and here were the positive outcomes from that. So those are just some ideas about your career management. And the thing I tell people about doing an inventory, and there's a great book that goes along with this by Cliff Hakam called We Are All Self-Employed. The thing about doing a weekly inventory is that nobody will do it for you. It's the only thing that you can do, and you'll forget what you've accomplished. I know that it's so easy to stay busy, and you were busy, you were trying to make it through different projects, but it's so easy to forget what you have in fact done. And so it's a great idea to keep a writing record of it. The last idea that I want to share with you before we go into questions is I want to talk about one of my favorite people, and that's Einstein. And I think he was not only brilliant, but he's a stunning example of what it means to, I think, work smart. Not only because he was, the smartest person in the world, but who's ever lived, but it was how he thought about time that I think is so clever, and it's a good note to close on. I just adore stories about Einstein. And one time they asked him why he always looked so disheveled, and his clothing was, not so spit spot. And he said that he wore the same thing every day, which was usually sweatpants and a t-shirt, and it didn't look like his hair had been combed, but he did that intentional, which I think is such a great way to look at it from an intentional perspective. And he said that the time he took, this is the guy that, kind of created definitions of time, but he said the time he took to stand in front of his closet and decide what he was going to wear, what he was going to put on for that day, was time that was taken away from his formulas. And he didn't want anything to take away from working on his mathematical formulas. And so that's why he eliminated that decision to be more productive and to kind of bank that time so that he could put it towards working on his formulas. But if you know a little bit about Einstein's life, he also was he was a sailor, and I believe he played the violin. So he was very intentional about his time, and it's a great story to think that even he was looking for ways to work smarter and probably not harder. So we're at 12:36. I'm open to questions.
Great.
I know I gave you a lot.
Thank you so much,
information.
Marie. This is awesome, though. Does that mean we're all going to start wearing the same exact thing every day?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You absolutely can. It's okay. There's not a problem to that. Are we okay time-wise?
Yes. So our co-hosts do have a few questions, and feel free, attendees, to go ahead and put any other questions in the Q&A chat box.
So here's a question from Melissa Lee.
Okay.
And her question is, to be a level 1 communicator and read the room.
Yeah.
Any tips when you are in a Zoom presentation or teaching and there is not video or feedback to read the room anymore? This relates to working from home and the life of Zoom meetings that everyone is dealing with. So
right.
How do you read that room, particularly when people have their cameras off? I think is maybe what the questioner is asking.
Well, it's a great question. And, I think the ability to read people is key. But I think the first place people go to get data is your face. That's the first place people go. The work of Paul Elfman, he says that, your Ekman, your face is where people go. And so what you want to do in Zoom is when the faces are there, to try to see, first question, is this person seem like they're an introvert? Do they seem to be emoting? Or are they an extrovert? And then you want to make sure that you gauge your conversation accordingly. One size does not fit all for communication, and especially in different channels. And saying less to some people is actually effective. More communication is not always the best. But I would hope that, is this person a teacher?
I'm not sure what the individual specialty is.
Okay.
Probably not. I would assume not.
Probably
somebody
not. Well,
making a staff member or a leader doing presentations, probably.
Okay. Well, I think that I think that we have this. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that we have this kind of tendency in our culture to jump from communication to communication channel. And I see this with you know, you see it with the onslaught of email, and then everybody's overloaded with email, and now everybody's on a Zoom meeting. I think the best way for you to practice your communication skills is to not just use one channel, like pick up the telephone and have a one-on-one phone call with somebody. At least you can pick up the intonation and you can get the energy from their tone of voice. There's a great interview just recently that NPR had on a book called, you know, The Importance of Our Tone of Voice and how much energy we give off in our tone of voice. It was just conducted, I think, last week or this week. It's about our voice. People pick up energy from your voice. And so get really good at reading people's voices.
I'm just going to piggyback on that really fast because I get this myself because I've done a lot of Zoom presentations, and it is hard to kind of get, you know, as presenters or even, you know, entertainers or teachers, you get energy from your audience.
Right.
And if your audience is all a static or is a video and there's no interaction, you don't get that feedback generally. It is hard to know if you're making an impact, if your message is getting through to your audience. So is there a way, maybe there's tools through chat or through some other mechanism that you can sort of check in with your audience to see if they're with you or connecting with you? Is there something like that out there? Or how do you make sure that they're engaged and you haven't lost anybody?
Yeah, I think that's another great question. It's difficult because every Zoom session is, you know, it's a different size. And for me, I'm more of an extroverted, very interactive instructor. So if I can't see my audience, it's even more challenging. You know, you're seeing my hands go up because, you know, I'm you know, I like to roller skate in and teach a class. I think making it, you know, setting up some ground rules at the very beginning of a meeting or a class. If you have questions, or comments, please put them in the chat room. I really like to get a read on what's working and what's not working. And also because this is such a new, brand new area of communication. You know, it's just starting. Is ask people maybe at the beginning, you know, what works best for you? You know, what were the sessions that you were involved with and the meetings that you've been in where you've come away and you felt more productive? What were some of the aspects? What were some of the tips that others used so that you kind of, you know, have a running best practices list of what works, and, you know, maybe pick up some tips. I do understand though how hard it is to talk to the computer and how exhausting it is to get, you know, 100 people's faces looking at you. And if you have introverts looking at you, there's no animation going on. I mean, that's a real exhaust. So I would also encourage people at the other end to make sure, if you want to be a level 1 communicator, make sure that if you are an introvert, and that goes back to my self-awareness point, if you're an introvert, when you're on Zoom, it's imperative that you animate your face. It's imperative to animate your face because a level 1 communicator has to be animated to keep people engaged.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful.
Okay, great.
So I loved your Eisenhower matrix. I thought that was very, very, very helpful, yet simple. It was simple and helpful.
Yeah.
But we do have a question about it. The question is, how do we keep important non-urgent tasks from getting overwhelmed when you have a lot of important urgent tasks that arise every day?
Okay, that's a great generic question. And I think that it's the beauty and the elegance and the essential nature of communication. You know, here's what I'm working on. Does this match your expectations for today? I don't know why people don't want to use that more, but they don't. This is what my expectation was for us for this week. Tell me what else that you see that might be competing with that. I mean, have a conversation about what is important. And if nothing else, create your own vocabulary around, task completion, how tasks are getting done. It's ironic to think that in this time of, being remote, communication is more important. It's not less important, it's more important. You're being evaluated all the time. And one of the things I wanted to say earlier is that, we're all evaluated immediately by how we communicate. Immediately, all the people that are watching me right now, you can define me in 10 words. You've already evaluated me. And so right now, you get evaluated on how you communicate, and there needs to be more communication that is safe, that is neutral, about what are some of our priorities for this week or for today, and how are we gonna reach those. More people need to be talking like that, and they don't talk like that. They stay in a silo and they think, well, this is what I'm working on. I don't know if it's the right thing or not. What are you using for communication?
Thank you.
So here's another question, Marilouise, and it's really kind of the intersection of planning systems and using the Eisenhower matrix. And the question, it goes as follows. I know that you said that we should use whatever weekly planning system works best for us.
Right.
Is it crazy that I still work with an old-fashioned to-do list, ? And any suggestions on how to improve a to-do list to meet the Eisenhower matrix? I use stars next to the important items, but feel that I should look into a different system. And then finally, any online programs to try.
Okay.
So,
Well,
three-part question.
Here's my little list. Here's my little paper. I just outed myself.
I'm taking a lot of notes. Keep going.
I'm a paper person, and I'm delighted that you have a to-do list. And I want to go back to self-awareness. If that's what makes you feel productive and effective, use it. I have a daily list on paper. I have a weekly list on paper, and I have a monthly list on paper. I really like to chronicle my time, and I like to see it on paper. I'm very visual, super visual, and that's what works for me, and it makes me feel comfortable about my day. So I want to give you permission, whoever asked the question, that a to-do list is absolutely lovely if it works for you. That's the only thing that matters. I knew early on that the phone was not going to be my friend. And typing in my days and my appointments, I knew early on that wasn't going to feel comfortable for me. And so I thrive working with paper and being organized. It's whatever works for you. That's the key. That's what ties back to self-awareness. What system do you feel most comfortable with? And I'm a list maker myself. It works really well for me, but I've known people who have, I've taught a lot of engineers in my career at UCI, a lot. And I'm delighted by engineers. I understand their language and, and their species. And I've had engineers that would make the list and they would add the thing on the list, and then so they could cross it out. So they would like put it on, and then so they could scratch it off. But whatever works for you, if it's a star that works for you, if it's a sticker, if it's, whatever works for you that makes it fun. And mark time in your day, mark time by what is the most effective for you. That's the only thing that makes sense. I would fail miserably in my daily output if I needed to use my phone to depend on staying organized. I would fail.
Thank you. And another part of that question was, how do you have the to-do list then go into the Eisenhower matrix? And it would seem to me that you would take your list and look at what's important, what's urgent, and kind of put it in quadrants. But is there more that you would like to add to that? Because she wanted that intersection.
Sure, that's a great question. So what I do, and the way that I use this matrix is that the first thing I do is I look at what's up on my calendar for the day. I do a day. And then I look at what's the best use of my time throughout the day based on the matrix. That's the question that I think is essential. So if I'm writing something, because I'm an instructor, I write classes, or I write a program, or, I write, I have to write something, and it has to be, it has to be impeccable. I'm going to do it when it's calm, and when I'm not in a crisis, when it's not an urgent time, and when it's the best time for my biological, my clock of time, my time clock. So my best time, because I'm aware, is in the morning. I'm very clear and sharp in the morning. I would find things I wouldn't find it in the afternoon or later in the evening. Everybody has their own best prime time. It's really called your prime time. When are you the most aware? When are you the most focused? And for me, it's the morning, and that's when I do my planning, and that's when I do anything that's related to fine motor skills. Fine motor skills for me is in the morning. And if it's important, I do it in the morning when I'm the most alert. And then in the afternoon, when I'm, not as alert, maybe I'm on my second cup of coffee, planning fits in there. And don't get me wrong, I do use the fourth quadrant a lot. I'll treat myself to things that aren't important and not urgent. But I'm super conscious of where I am in the quadrant during the day, and trying to match it with the best match of my time, of my energy flow, and of my individual focus, what works best for me. I don't know if that made sense. For example, if somebody is trying to get a hold of me, and I'm on a deadline, or I'm doing something important, I have a very specific set of skills that I use for that third quadrant, very specific set of skills for, it's not important, it's on their list, it's taking me away from my time, and that kind of has been eliminated. Or I'm very aware when I let somebody interrupt me, and I know it's going to take time, but I'm aware that they're doing it. I'm very aware that they're doing it, always.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. We have a few more questions, but we are out of time.
Oh,
We just want to first say thank you. Obviously a very popular topic, some wonderful questions. And for those of you, there were a couple we didn't get to questions, we are going to ask Marilouise offline and get those answers to everybody. So everybody's questions will get answered. We had to put the hand out. Go ahead, Marilouise.
I'm just going to say one last thing I wanted to add before you close, and I apologize for adding this in. If anybody wants to connect with me, we didn't really talk about that, but I am on LinkedIn by my name. And you can see on my page there that I work for UCI. And if you want to find me, I do want to, in the coming months, send out some weekly strategies and around communication. So find me that way. Sorry about that. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And a big thanks to Dr. Wilson and Ramona Agrela for being our co-hosts. It was just so much fun to have this dialogue and get to know some of our senior folks. So now I'm going to turn it over briefly to Tanya from DCE to talk about some offerings of DCE, and then I'm going to reiterate the remaining workshops webinar series that we have. So over to you, Tanya.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here because I'm sharing some free and discounted opportunities from DCE. In case you didn't know, we still have the free courses from Coursera and Udemy. That's until March 31st. And we continue to offer the 50% discount to most of the DCE classes. I did want to point out the new Global Leadership Certificate program that launches in April. And the first one starts with leading across cultures, and that's going to be really good. If you go to the URL that you see at the bottom where it says resources, you can find all of the other discounts and the form that you need to get the discount. I did want to point out that if you go to the link that says corporate on the right-hand side of the PowerPoint, you'll find a webinar series called Let's Learn. That will also give you some free resources, topics like tips and tricks for homeschooling, which a lot of people need. managing virtual projects, and even some cybersecurity during pandemic webinars. And if I saw in the chat that someone wants to have Marilouise come and give a training, if you reach out to me, I will help you connect. And also, if you need any customized training in your unit, we can do that at DCE. You can contact me. We work with the School of Medicine, OIT, UCOP, and many corporations. So reach out and I will be happy to guide you. And thank you. Back to you, Pamela.
Great, thank you, Tanya. So here we have our remaining 7 weeks of webinars. I hope that all of you will join us. They're almost all right at the noon hour. Some are at 11, some are at 12. So take a look here. It's also on the website, and we're adding additional co-hosts as well. So, you know, keep a regular eye on our website, and we certainly hope to see you here over the next few weeks. Thank you so much, everybody. Signing off for now. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye, everyone.